Hello, it's the end of August 2022. Here we are, still on Mother Earth. I'm still watching the planets as they appear to travel around us. Focusing today on Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus and has been there, slowly traveling along since 2018. Taurus, the financial system, female issues, women's issues, nature. Uranus, sudden change, new direction, new beginnings. So these financial systems that we have in the world and all of these Taurus things can still and easily be affected with big change going on between 2018 and continuing onward till 2025 when Uranus enters Gemini. 2025 will be a very significant year. Anytime the outer planets, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, anytime the outer planets change signs, it's very significant because it reflects large transformative change taking place in society, in the larger group collective. And in 2025, Pluto will have just entered Aquarius. Saturn's going to change signs in 2025. Neptune's going to change signs in 2025. Uranus is going to change signs in 2025. Certainly, I would think some very strong energy towards new beginnings, rebuilding the world after we have seen so much breaking down with our systems and our structures over the last period of years. If we look at the history of Uranus being in the sign Gemini, which again is there for 7 years, once every 84 years, going back to the 1600s, it was 1690 to 97 that Uranus was in Gemini, and that correlates with the very first postal systems being established in the American colonies. Gemini, the sign that is all about communications and ideas. Uranus, the planet of new beginnings and new directions, stimulating these in Gemini things for the world. And the next time Uranus was in Gemini, 84 years later, we actually, the scientific community, quote, discovered Uranus. This is when we as humans became conscious of the planet Uranus being a planet and where it was. It was an unknown factor until that point, so we became conscious of Uranus, interestingly enough, in 1781. Now, it was 1776 that we saw the American Revolution. One of the things that Uranus symbolizes is freedom, rebellion, independence. So we have the American colonies becoming independent from England in 1776, just as Uranus was shifting into Gemini, and just after, within a few years after, we see the French Revolution, which I believe was in 1784 or 5, just 4 years after Uranus was discovered, the planet of revolution, the planet of freedom and independence. We discovered it as humans, became conscious of it as we became conscious of issues of freedom and independence, and we demanded it as humans in this evolutionary path. Interesting point. 84 years later, Uranus is in Gemini again. And this is when the first transatlantic cables, the communication cables, were laid on the Atlantic Ocean between Europe and the American colonies. Again, we have connection being made between Europe and the North American continent by telephone. Now, this was again between 1859 and 1866. Very primitive telephones and the very first potential to communicate between the two continents. And it was 84 years later when we see 1942 to 1949, Uranus is back in Gemini again. And we see the atomic bomb being developed. A whole new way of communicating with energy. The first fusion chain reaction, the first atomic bomb, the first atomic power was developed when Uranus was traveling through Gemini. Now, it's also very interesting to note in the USA's chart, this is the United States of America's chart. Again, take note in your chart, where is Uranus in the birth chart? And where's Gemini, more importantly, in your birth chart? So where would Uranus be traveling now? Uranus was in the sign Gemini in the American birth chart, right on the edge of the 7th house cusp, right on the edge, the doorway of the 7th house. Now the 7th house is all about peace and war, how one country gets along with other countries. In a personal chart, how one individual gets along with other individuals. It tells us about partnership issues. So Uranus, the planet of sudden change, new beginnings, very powerful energy, was sitting right on the doorway of the 7th house for this country. And Uranus, interestingly enough, historically, as it's gone through Gemini, it entered that house of the 7th house, the house of war for this country, exactly the week that the Civil War started. Now it's only gone through the 7th house twice since the country began. It's a young country. And it's getting very close to going through there again is the point. Transiting Uranus will be entering into the 7th house again for the US of A in 2026 and traveling through there for a 7-year period. It went through that 7th house during their Civil War, and 84 years later it went through that 7th house again, exactly as they were involved in the Second World War. In fact, Uranus was being triggered by important transits just as they dropped the atomic bomb on Japan in 1945. So in 2025, Uranus will be entering Gemini for the whole world. And in the USA's chart, it will be entering Gemini and returning to its birth position. And as the years unfold into the late 20s, we're talking 26, 27, 28, Uranus will enter the 7th house again. War, involvement with a very big, serious war for the US, or another civil war? I mean, it's very hard to know, and of course, predicting is not the point of using this. Astrology was meant to be used as a tool for self-awareness, not a predictive device. But one can't help be consciously aware when, in correlation with dates, one sees big changes coming in terms of Uranus leaving Taurus and moving into Gemini, which was the purpose of this video today, to talk about that and 2025. With all of the change going on in 2025, it usually would be new beginnings, new starts, a new structural shift, building new systems in our world. Take care.